This is Ross Payton. This is RPPR episode 110, Final Revelation Post-Mortem. And with me, not as always, is Aaron and Caleb.
Hello.
As we are here talking about the Final Revelation Trail of Cthulhu campaign. In this episode, Tom is not here. He is busy doing other things.
Tom things.
Yes. So this is probably our shortest full campaign, but it raised a lot of interesting issues in terms of the responses we saw on the site. And so I thought we'd spend an episode dissecting purism versus pulp Cthulhu and all that good stuff. Before we get into that, and we do have shout outs and anecdotes, but we first off, I have a bit of news. We have, if you're a fan of an addict of the actual plays, we have B-Sides Volume 2, Playtest Pandemonium out. It's been out for a little while, actually, but we had some technical issues I've had to fix.
So not completely aired anymore.
Yeah, it's not, when I was exporting, I had to switch computers to export these episodes, and I give technical explanations on the forums, which you can read if you want. But the long point of it is they're all fixed now. So there's 24 episodes in this, including all the APs that we recorded. Caleb and I recorded at Fear the Con this year and at Gen Con this year, plus some playtests of Killsplosion, new games of Fiasco, Fate Accelerated, some of Tom's playtests of Call of Cthulhu scenarios, and Aaron's Beloved Dead.
Yeah.
So, and even some Dogs in the Vineyard. So it will be released for free in December of this year. But if you want to get it now, it's only $20 for over 48 hours of content. So, and it helps pay all the hosting bills and all that other junk for this podcast. So
keep yourself busy for two full days.
Yes, or if you're Carl, kill one day because he is a super fan. So we like all our fans. So thank you for supporting us. Anyways, also we're working on Boiling Point. We're getting Peter is working on the revisions from playtesting notes, and so we will start editing them and getting all that junk done so we can get the book out to you. And I have started work on Sparkles. The favorite NPC, top
Yay!
Unicorn. That will be the next Base Raider supplement. It's one of the stretch goals of the Boiling Point Kickstarter. I'm sure everyone is super thrilled for that, especially Caleb. We'll have to do a Base Raiders game featuring the tragic story.
No, we
don't. I know we don't have to, but I kind of want to.
Well,
yeah.
Does getting stabbed by a magical horn really put you in that bad of a mood?
You helped him murder 2 police officers by watching them suffocate.
FBI agents.
It doesn't
it's like
make it
we're
better.
holding it hostage, and I don't know why I'm still talking.
When there's a murderer and they don't let them wander around, it's not called holding them hostage.
Semantically speaking, Caleb is correct. It is a different term.
I wasn't aware of the murders at that point.
Yeah. I do want to
Just
mention,
a stabbing.
by the way, actually, another bit of news. There will be I don't have the details worked out yet because I haven't figured out what the categories are going to be. But there will be a contest in the near future for the RPPR actual play fan creation. So, what is your favorite moment from the actual plays? If you can recreate that either as art, as a story, or as a reenactment, drunk or otherwise, like drunk history or something like that, or just get hopped up on energy drinks and recreate, Aaron's your favorite Aaron death, your favorite Tom Grimdark moment,
your favorite David pun, worst
your favorite
or best.
terrible Ross plan, or impulsive action. Not even really a plan. I like
best Caleb death trap.
So start thinking about that. When I figure out the exact categories, I will let you guys know. And that will probably be in a future episode when I reveal the full details of that.
Although I do have a slight request for anybody who decides to take the category of any of my deaths. If you do a video or audio one, please leave out the OC song, whatever that was. So,
what you said?
Yeah, I know there's another name.
For copyright issues, I would probably ask for people to only use stuff that they have the copyright to.
If you're going to do an Aaron Death supercut, you have to set it to the theme from the Dead Island trailer. Everyone knows that. What you say is played out.
Yeah, this is true.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Some elegiac piano.
I would also
in the
accept
background.
Mozart's Requiem, you know.
Well, no, I'm only going to.
For that classic.
I will only be okay with that is if it slowly fades out and then fades
Or
back
the
into
what was that
yakety
song?
sax.
What was that bit of classical music that William Dafoe was killed to in Platoon?
Oh no!
Oh yeah, that
Adagio
works
for
too.
strings.
Yeah,
Adagio for
definitely that works as well. You know, use your creativity.
Okay, although I will say, actually, if you decide to use Adagio for strings, there is a beautiful choral version from a game called Homeworld. If you use that one, you get bonus points from me. They mean nothing.
Or Calliope music. Use Calliope music because Calliope music works for everything.
No, it does.
Public domain Calliope music.
Does not.
Anyway, so let's talk about the final revelation.
Actually, one more bit of news.
Oh, yeah.
Gen Con event submissions are up.
Oh,
Yes.
that's a good
And
one.
Gen Con is actually early enough this year that I can actually plan on attending rather than knowing a week or so ahead if I can actually
Yeah.
know. So we are looking to do more panels this
Yeah.
year. But what should we do them about?
One of them will definitely be Game Designers Workshop.
Yes. It's not like you're gonna. We're not gonna do anything if you don't say anything. But on the forums, you guys should get on there if you want us to talk about any specific subjects in front of large groups of people, and by large I mean like 7 to 8 of you.
There were more in some.
Yeah, there were more in some.
We could lie and say that we'll get better people and more.
Yes, we can also lie to industry veterans and get them there to bring crowds for us. So the sooner you suggest topics, the quicker we can get on scamming them to going to poorly attended events.
Yes.
Yay!
Come to see
Sting, but
Yeah.
point at the end.
Come to see Glancy. We gave him whiskey.
Well, that doesn't. Delicious sweet bourbon. Keep that in mind. Also, if you want to run games, if you want to get a badge or free product from Arc Dream, get in touch with Shane Ivey at Arc Dream Publishing, or with me. I can get you in touch with him, and run some Wild Talents or Monsters Other Childish Things or any other Arc Dream game.
No Soul Left Behind will be
No
out by
Soul
then.
Left Behind,
It's going to lay out as we speak.
You can get your badge if you run 3 games. You can get $5 per player per game. So, that's $30 worth of product for one 4-hour game with 6 players. So you can do pretty well and have a lot of fun doing it. I don't know if I'm going to be focusing more on panels and workshops this year than doing events or running games because they're 4 hours and I want to record a lot of stuff. So
I will be playtesting.
Yes.
Yeah, and I actually will be running games on my own separate from Arc Dream this year, primarily to playtest Beloved Dead. I'm trying to write it up into a final form so I could submit it either to
Well, the Unspeakable is with Arc Dream, so you can
that's
still do it for
That's what I was thinking of. Unspeakable or our own project. And another one that some people got to do a very prototype version of, which was The Black Dream, which I'm trying to still work the kinks out of, but I will do an official playtest of that. And just for fun, I might bring back Legacy of Nim, because that's kind of a perennial favorite now.
Yeah.
So play rats, kill people.
Very dark.
You know what it's about now.
We've had a lot of discussion about that. Speaking of dark Lovecraftian horrors.
and that leads wide.
Yeah, very good segue there, Aaron. So the final revelation was a 4-session campaign that Caleb ran.
Wasn't it 5? No, it was 4.
Yeah,
You're right.
because the Branding Box, we also wrapped up the Friday
Yeah,
group in it.
yeah.
And it's from Pelgrim Press. It was originally 4 scenarios, individual scenarios that they then put into one book and had a framing scenario to figure out how to link all these very separate, different scenarios together. We have them on the actual play sites. I will have a link to a campaign index page, which I haven't done quite yet, but by the time this podcast posted, I will. So you can listen to all of them if you haven't already. Caleb, you ran it, so why don't you, for the listeners who aren't already familiar with the campaign, why don't you explain its premise and just a little bit about each scenario so they're familiar with what we're talking about?
Well, when I bought the book, I was only familiar with Watchers in the Sky, which just the cell information sold me on the Pelgrane site, and I really liked the PDF. And I saw the book at Gen Con, and I had no idea it was part of a campaign.
Yeah.
So I bought it. And then I read through the whole thing, and then I realized it really wasn't a piece of a campaign. As a writer, it was so obviously we made these 4 standalone scenarios. Can you figure out some way to make them a campaign and make them more sellable? Yeah. And he did. So first off, super jealous of that, because totally should have done that for No Security. if I had to do it again, it was really
Framing devices.
Yeah, it was a really smart idea, and also pretty innovative, at least in RPGs, if not in the world of horror anthologies. And also, they were purist scenarios. So, like, having read Trail of Cthulhu, they spend a lot of time delineating between the point values of purist and pulp play and things of that nature. But I'd also realized that in terms of publications and Trail of Cthulhu I'd seen played and Trail of Cthulhu I had played, I had never actually seen someone going hard pushing to the purist spectrum.
That's true.
I'd seen middle of the road or shotguns and dynamite, kill these tentacle monstrosities, yee-haw. Yeah.
Which is an actual book title.
Yeah, and I'd seen like one extreme, but I hadn't seen the other. And so I read it, and it was really interesting to me because I was familiar with Lovecraft from gaming first. Like, reading D20 and Cthulhu games was like my first introduction to Lovecraft. And then I read Lovecraftian fiction, and I obviously noted the differences between the games and the source material. And then I found the purist stuff to be really interesting because it was sort of more individualized and more hopeless and more fitting with that. So I read it. I didn't know when I'd ever run it. And then eventually we were in a lull for something to play, and I wanted to run something. And it occurred to me that as much scenario stuff as I have written, which is a lot at this point, I had never actually run any pre-generated scenario except for Think Before Asking. So I kind of explained it to you guys, and we talked about it, and that's how we came to play it. And then... So I was worried about it at first because it was very much not anything we'd done before, Cthulhu-wise.
Yeah.
But I think it worked out. I just promised myself I'd be very clear about the tone of the game and the likely ends of every scenario, which is total death and insanity.
To be fair, like when we play Cthulhu games, we kind of all already assume that. Like there's that. We're batting, I think, about 50% for horrible ends in Cthulhu, especially one-shots in limited games.
True.
Yeah.
But in most of those cases, though, when we were doing
it's more heroic, though.
Yeah, it's heroic. There is a small chance of survival, too, or at least delaying whatever horrible entity is coming out of the portal versus what we were doing here.
Yeah, I mean, sheer death count, we're probably on par with Final Revelation, but part of what I like, and I think it's charm, if you could air quote that, is that there is very little, like, go on without me, I'll hold them back, which is your typical Cthulhu death. It is very much like, things don't matter.
Yeah.
Your loved ones don't matter. You don't matter. Die quietly and know that nothing changed. And, it is extremely fatalistic, which is why I emphasize the tone so much, because, I think if I just said, no, it's really hard, everyone would be like, yeehaw, Thompson guns and playing really conservative to get to the end and stuff like that. But I'm just like, nope, really bleak.
Yeah. And, you mentioned purism versus pulp, which we're all familiar with, but to sort of explain it more to everybody else who isn't as well-versed in minutia of Lovecraft, these are the two kind of major schools of how you depict Lovecraftian / Cthulhu mythos horror. And the pulp one is the one more people are familiar with. Certainly, that's what you see in the video games, the board games, a lot of our actual plays, which is the Tommy Gun and Dynamite. You see it in the fiction of Robert E. Howard's Cthulhu fiction or August Derleth.
Well, it's also in Lovecraft fiction when Armitage is just
Dunwich Horror,
yeah, or even Dexter Ward. No, fuck you. I went to that country and I blew it up. Where's your essential salts now, bitch? That's very much out of character for a typical Lovecraftian protagonist. But
and the
Armitage is a badass.
Right.
So yeah.
And the purest one is the one that emphasizes the cosmic horror, the helplessness, the futility, the nihilistic nature of it. And that would be more actually the Call of Cthulhu itself, the story, which ends with the narrator. Well, was it his grandfather or his uncle who
I think grandfather.
I thought it was actually his uncle, but I could.
Anyways, while he died, he was probably killed by the cult. I'm probably going to be killed by the cult. Cthulhu's going to rise up. We're all going to die.
What's the one with the painting again?
Whitley.
Well, the Watleys is Dunwich Horror. But
Dunwich Horror.
Yeah.
Charles
Anyway.
Ward has the painting.
But anyway, you know what we're saying with.
I would say Beyond or the Mountains of Madness would have that too, especially with the ending. Like as they're flying away, they see.
Danforth crazy.
Yeah.
Narrator, please don't go back.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then it's just total party wipe. So
those are the two kind of themes, and people sort of been oscillating. Trail of Cthulhu sort of makes the case you could run games in a purist mode, and that was kind of a design goal of it, to run either as two-fisted shooting down cultists by the dozen, or oh god, I'm a dilettante and I'm in my grandmother's attic and something's coming up to get me. I can't do anything about it. So and that's kind of the final revelation. But especially in the published products, far more pulp scenarios than there are purist scenarios. So surveying the literature, I mean, pulp was certainly emphasized early on, like in the 80s and everything. The earlier Massive Nyarlathotep is literally kick down a door, there's a room full of cultists, mow them down, move on to the next room.
Yeah. Additionally, the setting is also uncommon, at least for American Cthulhu gaming, because it is very much, the Lake District, Glaaki, and all that.
England in the 1930s.
Yeah, all that side of the mythos.
That's what the other writers like Ramsey Campbell.
Yeah, it is very much in Ramsey Campbell's house as a scenario. So
first we have that framing device where we're the Friday group and we're trying to figure out the scenario. So each week or each scenario we had a different set of horrors, and we played through the story that we're basically reading, which is an interesting way of doing it. So for me, one of the things is one of the interesting conflicts about this, or sort of conundrums of this particular campaign, is how do you preserve horror in this kind of atmosphere? Because first you have to communicate this no hope purist tone to your players, because otherwise you don't want to piss them off for like, what's the point of even playing? But at the same time, if every week you'd like it's going to end badly, how it's like you're spoiling the ending for the players. How do you maintain that horror? How do you get them interested in the game? So it's a very fine balance. I don't know, Aaron, you played a lot, so
it actually worked. I did like that, because ultimately we were kind of this ragtag, pre-Delta Green group trying to dig through this material and seeing if we could prevent this potential apocalypse from coming. And of course, we're just delving deeper and deeper into madness and disease and whatnot. And one of the reasons I really liked it is because talking about the framing device, it so reminded me of the original 70s Tales from the Crypt movie, if you've ever seen that. So where it had these 4, or I don't know if it was 5 people, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but being led into this mausoleum, you don't know why they're there, but suddenly they have whatever weird creep keeper, not the one from the 90s, but this is one guy, and they keep going through these stories of where they've either murdered, betrayed, robbed, or wronged somebody, and then finally, in the very end, you figure out, oh wait, they're all damned and in hell, or they're on their way into the netherworld. So, and that's what it really reminded me of, and kind of beckoned me along to see what the eventual end was, because other than the normal Cthulhu scenarios where there was a mild hope of stopping something, it was just so much about the atmosphere, and this one just kind of feeling out the long downward spiral, which would kind of made it the most interesting. So I would say if you're trying to do this just for a group you're not very familiar with their play styles, or you don't meet up that often, it's probably a bad idea, because they probably wouldn't understand that. But since you kind of gave us a little bit of preface about what would be happening on this one, it was much more enjoyable of the scenarios to go through and realize, like, oh, we're just kind of experiencing this horror story as we're going along, adding our own elements to it. So.
Yeah, if you're going to run one of these at a con, make sure you're very clear in your descriptive text. But I think that the strength of it is in the writing, and also in the system. So the core clue of every frame narrative is the clue that gets you to the actual one-shot scenario. But there are a number of clues in the frame scenario, and I love them because there is no investigative focus besides get to the one-shot core clue. Everything is those beautiful Trail of Cthulhu clues that are solely meant to creep you out more. Everything is parrot in the box clues to unsettle you. And I think a lot of them are pretty good. I think the fact that every document in the clues has the same date is brilliant.
Yeah.
And my fear in running it was not keeping a straight face when you guys did that, and like keeping myself. That was like my biggest struggle in running the game, is when you read documents and you asked like dates and when things was, just to say the date like it was any other date on a document and not remind you that there was the same date as last week and the same date as the week before that and the same date as the other thing you just looked at. And I knew I couldn't keep it going forever. That was the point. But like in the first few games, I was just
it ran pretty well.
Yeah, so it was really well written, and those foreshadowing like oh shit clues that came before and after each scenario, like when you saw the world differently after hearing the story or investigating the story, I thought they were really well done. I think the frame scenario thing, even though I recognize it as sort of how are we going to sell these one shots, I think it could have easily been really cheap and tacked on, and I don't think it was in this. I thought it was handled well.
Yeah.
No, and it felt integrated too, and I did like, I'm not sure if that was your particular touch or if that was written in the story, that at every time that we came back and were a little more insane, we were realizing we were forgetting things from our real life. That suddenly,
elements were changing.
The elements were changing, like where your spouses were either gone, you were supposed to be in an asylum, you were lost all your fortune, your children were dead, something.
Well, that was at the very end, I think, but like it's earlier, like in the middle of the scenario, like by the second or third campaign or scenario, there's like, there's a different guy at the bookshop.
Yeah, those things that were just those mild things that were changing eventually.
No, I did not change hardly anything compared to the text. Like it wasn't like Ross Payton running a pre-generated campaign where Willy Wonka's in there and it's like an insane mashup of everything he saw.
Willy Wonka, Eclipse in Dirty World was my own idea. Thank you very much.
No, I understand, but yeah, I very much played it according to the text. I viewed it more as like a role-playing challenge, like because they list every NPC with like 3 distinctive ticks you have to act out at the table.
Yeah.
So I was trying to do that as much as possible without delving into terrible British accents too much.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure I did. But yeah,
we're all guilty of that. So.
I mean, that's the thing. I think looking back at the entire campaign, it is very much an exercise in role playing more than it is like there are RPGs that are focused much more on the role playing versus the game part. I mean, like there are some that are far, far more into the game, like especially like tactical dungeon crawls with hardly like there's the guy sends you to a dungeon, you go to the dungeon, fight the monsters already. Like that's very heavy on the game side. But like this is very much more about the story and experiencing the story because like the resolution, the narrative is pretty much fixed. Like the players, it's not a question about if. Like there's no if in it. It's a very, this is predetermined.
Especially at Gumshoe, where, you're going to get the clues to get to the climax, regardless. No, your numbers are essentially useless. The only thing you need on a character sheet, truly, in to run the game, you don't even need numbers on your investigative. You just circle the ones your character would have, and then get those clues. And then you need a sanity mechanic. And that's pretty much it. You could get through all 4 scenarios with that because that's all you're going through to see. How crazy and how dead will you be by the end of it? And that's a numerical measure. So you could have health, sanity, and circle your investigatives, but you don't need general abilities or anything else because they're utterly futile.
Because the traditional, the standard kind of Cthulhu scenario is: can we find the murderer? Can we find the cultist? Can we stop the cult from doing the ritual? In fact, that really is the big one: stopping the ritual that the cult's doing, because those assholes are going to summon whatever, and it's going to do a horrible thing to everyone. Yeah. So, but that's not the question at all. That's not the dramatic question. The question is, I think the dramatic question is how we react to our circumstances. Yeah. And so it's very storytelling focused, and it's very unusual in that respect. I mean, and the thing is, you could do a pure scenario that does have that. Can we stop the cult from doing the thing? But that's not what this is about. And it would be a very unusual challenge. But yeah.
No, and it's And I think it's good just for especially kind of an exercise for
It's a character
development because it comes when everything is said and done. It comes down to who are you at the end of all things.
Yeah, how do you react to this? Like how? I mean, because sometimes you are in a horrible situation, you can't get yourself out. You know, if you sometimes you're shipwrecked and you're gonna eat everyone else, and then you're gonna starve to death. Like there's nothing else you can do. It's just how the cards play.
It's Purist and Pulp is like a dimmer switch. It's not a light. It's not an on and off switch. But
that's a very good point.
I will admit that as I read the book, I had an idea in my head what Purist Cthulhu and Trail of Cthulhu would look like.
Yeah.
Because I've written some really bleak scenarios like Revelations and stuff where like your chances of getting through it at all are very, very slim. Well, like Revelations, you have to go to the right place in town at the right time, or you entirely miss your chance to survive, and it just moves without you.
A Debt Willer scenario.
Exactly. But like, that's what I was expecting more along those lines, which I suppose is a little bit self-centered of me. But what I got was like turn the dimmer and then break it off, like because it was just like there's just no chance. There was just no chance ever. Throw your character sheet away. It was all an illusion anyway that you had a character, like. And I was surprised and I enjoyed it. So
yeah, and
it could work as a Hillfolk game as long as you all agreed to be very depressing. So yeah.
I think it's definitely a fun experience. It's almost, but in some ways, it is not. I mean, almost at certain points, it's not even much of a game because, like, and we'll get into it when we get into specific scenarios because it's like the game part is your choices have to have agency and matter, like, because otherwise you're just reading a book or listening to a story. So it's very much heavy on the narrative, not so much on the story or the player agency or the game part. So. It's interesting to play through. I wouldn't want to do this for every average game, though.
No,
this
is definitely like
a special occasion kind of one. But it worked though very well, and and sometimes you kind of need that a little more atmospheric game for just general storytelling. Because last thing I can remember with our friend Andy, who is much more into the indie scenario. And years ago when he came to Gen Con Play, we did another game called Sign and Stranger, which is very much what this reminded me of, where everything was just the narrative influenced by the players, but the outcome was more or less set in stone.
Was that a published game, or is that something?
Yeah, it's a published game, so...
And, and I like story games and stuff, but I will admit that, like, Fiasco's not my first thing to play, because I feel it gets silly even when I'm not ramble turducken. But this kind of wanted to make me dive deeper down the story gaming well because, it was a really satisfying game where essentially the numbers and the dice were not informing much of what was going on. So it makes me want to try something like Hillfolk or Pulse.
Yeah, definitely.
Or something like that. But yeah, it is more demanding of the players. Like you got to.
But Hillfolk, the outcome, the final outcome, is not set in stone. Like it's not pre-written. So
no, it is not.
This is
which is sort of the paradox for me.
Yeah.
Like in that reading, Final Revelation, which is very much you start here, you end here.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't want to? That's the point.
Yeah.
You're doing it anyway. That's something so railroady, according to other players, would make me want to do something or give me the confidence that we could do something as freeform as like Pulse or Hillfolk.
Yeah.
Which I suppose is the irony of it. But,
I mean, I think part of the fundamental appeal of this campaign is it is about appreciating Lovecraftian horror, Lovecraft, that subgenre of horror, and so you have to really love that type of fiction and want to, because if you only do like games that are based on like the Dunwich horror or that pulp mode, or the case of Charles Dexter Ward where there's more of a heroic or more of a not a predetermined outcome, you're only getting part of the story. You're only getting part of the experience. So, I mean, you've already talked about your experience of Lovecraft in terms of reading and playing. What about you, Aaron? What is your...
and I'm kind of only on the cusp of that, too, because I've only just started to actually read into a lot of Lovecraft.
You read a lot of Harry Kuttner, right? Like, you...
I actually just got just reading on him, although his was a little bit different on that, because just of the... I don't want to say of the one story that actually inspired The Beloved Dead.
Yeah.
which was the Bells of Horror, that very much was a purist one. That these bells, artifacts.
Well, how long ago did you read that? A while ago?
About a year ago.
Oh, okay.
That was about a year ago when I started doing that, and was reading through his stuff. Yeah, and a lot of more his are very much purist in that. I'm trying to think of one or two that might be more pulpy, but the Bells of Horror is.
So again, you're more of a recent
I'm kind of a recent issue.
See, I've had the opposite experience where I started with the Lovecraft stories. Like I found books in the library, and I started reading them. I was like, what? Like this was before. I don't want to say like, oh, I was a hipster before it was popular or whatever. But I kind of discovered I discovered the fiction, and then I discovered the role playing game shortly after that. But both of us was like, holy shit, this is totally different than everything else. Like
here's your fedora.
Yeah. Well, no, please give me some credit.
It's requisite,
No. But I read all of Lovecraft stuff, everything I could find, and then I read some of the other acolytes, and Lovecraft. He called it Yog Sothoth, not the Cthulhu mythos, but but that was my kind of thing, was reading that and appreciating that. But even then, I kind of didn't have any problem doing pulp stuff. Like the pure stuff, I didn't even become aware of that real distinction until much later on, when I started reading some more of the critical theories about it. Like as I read a couple of years ago, Against Lovecraft, Against Love, Against Life. I think it's from Michel Houellebecq. He's a French author. He wrote a book defending Lovecraft and said, yeah, he was racist, but it's still okay to read Lovecraft. Because he was totally racist. Yeah. He was super, super racist, even by 1920 standards. But he was a dorky dilettante, kind of I'm out of touch with reality racism, rather than he was. So, anyways.
Well, I mean, coming from my simulacrum background, what I'd seen the years of the Stealing Cthulhu, cultural digestion of Lovecraft come 60 or 70 years late, far more than actual Lovecraft. I still feel like I know enough about English literature to understand what Lovecraft's about and find his ideas really interesting. But I will be the first to admit, I don't particularly enjoy reading a lot of Lovecraft. The prose is too purple. It's not I don't know what the words mean. I know what the words mean. I don't know why you would put that there.
He was paid by the words.
I guess.
They're all serials. So.
I'm going to be the first to say that a lot of it's not for me.
Yeah.
But that said, what I was really refreshed by in the final revelation, in that I feel like for one of the first times since the initial Sandy Peterson book, which I have also read, that it was coming to the game directly from the text. I think it was Lovecraft to the table. Whereas I feel a lot of Cthulhu gaming now, and it's not bad, and it's not even a mark against it, but much of it is not so much dealing directly with Lovecraft as it is dealing with the history of Cthulhu gaming as well. My scenarios are definitely not commentaries upon Lovecraft in any way, shape, or form. If anything else, it's a riff on cosmic horror, that kind of as a gaming trope, and things to do to duplicate it and try its original form in terms of sensation rather than that. And then Delta Green, which I absolutely love, I don't think it's a riff on Lovecraft necessarily. When Glancy talks about in his panel, using Nodens as a creepy-ass sea god for injured veterans, I really think that's a commentary on how Delta Green's involved and not Nodens.
Right.
So it was interesting to read the final revelation and play it, because I feel like it was fresh-faced from the 80s. You took somebody who'd read a bunch of Lovecraft who wanted to make a role-playing game, and this was their first attempt.
It was not filtered through,
Yeah, but at the same time, it was Trail of Cthulhu, which is a very refined and streamlined commentary on Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
So I feel like it took modern influences without being about the modern influences, and it still stayed focused on the fiction, or at least the theme of the fiction, and regenerating that at the table.
No, that's a fair criticism. And I think probably at this point we should probably start talking a little bit about the specific scenarios.
I refuse.
Okay. Well, good night, everybody. This is a fun episode. So we'll just talk about them in order. I think the first one is obviously the Dine at St. Margaret's, which, spoiler alert, is a color out of space scenario. And I enjoyed it because I enjoy color out of space scenarios in Cthulhu gaming. And speaking of that, because this is very much a very I've read there are multiple color out of space scenarios out there. There are multiple authors, and they all are written structurally. There's not much you can do. They all have the same kind of approach. You go to the place where the color is. You see the people die, and you see the color fading out of things. You see the horribly mutated things, and then you see the color out of space, and you either flee or you die. And that's there's one in Cthulhu now where it's a space shuttle that crash lands in Kansas, and you go there and there's astronauts and farmers who are dying of it, and you're like, oh shit. There's one. There's one that I've run called Machine Tractor Station 37, which is set in 1930s Russia, and you go to this tractor factory in the middle of Siberia, and you see all these horrible things, and because you're Soviets and you're both groups of differing spy groups, you kill each other because you distrust each other, and then the color kills you, or you run out in the cold and die, and on and on and on. And this was. I liked it because I like color out of space scenarios. They are kind of samey, but there's still enough variation in them. How does the color fuck up this particular area? How do the people? It's about rationalization. This horrible thing's happening to you, and you're not leaving. Why aren't you leaving? You're dying. What the fuck is wrong with you? My
favorite part of St. Margaret's. I have two things.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the use of credit rating.
Yeah.
Because credit rating Cthulhu for me is how do I buy that Tommy gun and dynamite? And as a guy who wrote 5 Cthulhu-esque games set in the Great Depression, I didn't even put 1930s. The Great Poor People. I love that credit rating is your only access to certain clues. Very much is what I was trying to do with Wise of March. It's you only get half the game if you're white and the other half if you're black. It's just if your credit rating's 2 or below, get my bags, Jeeves! And then everybody else is just eating soup at dinner. I thought that was really clever and very realistic. And then I also enjoyed the way it expanded upon Trail of Cthulhu's drive system to, of course, at the end say they mean nothing and your whole life's motivation is moot, which is a good way to start off the tone of that campaign. And I also like the way that they encouraged you to constantly bring them up again in vignettes in specific places in the scenario. So I think that's not a bad idea for any Cthulhu. Our Trail of Cthulhu game is to slowly check in with players' drives with little vignettes as the game goes on. But
yeah, Aaron, what about your experiences playing?
Actually, kind of feeding into the whole credit rating thing, since I was playing the token poor person and this kind of sneaking into it. I absolutely loved kind of that baseline that I had to kind of crawl through the muck to get the same clues that everybody else did, either through general wheeling or dealing, which made it another interesting. And also bringing it up to that street level that I was just looking for my friend who essentially took a job to get food and shelter, and now the deal that I've been offered seems even shadier than that before. And of course, yes, I love the device that was used to possibly either summon and or disperse the color. We never were really sure.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed
that was a very good red herring, by the way.
Yeah, and it's just in there. They never explain it.
Yeah,
they tie it into esoterrorists. There's an esoterrorist little Easter egg in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I love that it would be easy to cut people off from the scenario with the credit rating thing, but it was really a parallel path. There were things you would only see as working class, and there were things you would only see as upper class, and you had to bridge the divide in order to hold hands and approach your doom. But yeah, that's what I found really interesting about it.
Well, And these rules, these class rules, I should say, are not unique specifically to Dying of St. Margaret's, but they're certainly more heavily emphasized in that scenario than any of the others.
Yes.
And just so the red herring that was mentioned earlier, there's basically a machine that you find out is a portal to another universe, but like if you jump into it, that's it. Your character just disappears. And it has no effect on the color out of space. So it's like, you think it's a big important revelation. Oh my god, there's this crazy machine in this cool auditorium, but like we can't. All right, what's it do? All right, well, okay, well, we don't understand. Fuck.
Yeah, I'd like to think my scamp ended up with the Ithians, but probably not. So.
Yeah. You would need air. And not all the radiation. So, it was certainly a good way to start the campaign. It's to set the mood. Is it specifically that one's supposed to go first, or can you run them in any order?
They are... I think you could run them in any order, but they are linear in that the epilogues where you go back to the Friday group are very much, okay, you've learned this story now. Reality looks different, and that the things get increasingly worse. Like the symptoms of you seeing through the illusion get worse and worse and worse. But could you plug and place different scenarios and different? Yeah, that you probably could. Okay. It would take very little work, but it is not written that way. It is written do this one first.
Okay.
And I also think it works better thematically, especially when you look at the end of the rending box and if you burn down the tunnel.
Yeah.
Because it is like one big final F you to the players, and
Well, we'll get to that. Next, though, is The Watcher of the Sky, which was the most controversial, apparently.
My favorite.
Yes. My least favorite. Well, no, Rending Box is kind of... but like,
Rending Box is by far my least favorite.
Yeah. The Watcher of the Sky, essentially, is a series of loosely connected events that we investigate, and then it ends. Like, there's no... It's not only purist, it's anti-narrative in that there is no finale. Just a series of events happens, our characters become increasingly mad, and then more and more distraught, and then, like, we never find... There's no ending to it. There's no there's no, like, aha! Like in The Dying of St. Margaret's, we find out our friends go missing because they investigate the color out of space. We don't know what it is or where it came from, but we know it kills people, and the end. Yeah. Okay, nothing else matters. But in this one, we don't even get that. Like someone goes mad, I think, is the start of it, and we're clued on to these strange birds and these other events that happen, and we investigate
the fungus, the ticks, the weird cult around the birds.
Yeah, but there's no resolution,
which is fantastic. Look. I will make this case.
Yeah.
From the character's perspective, there's absolutely no difference between The Dying of St. Margaret's and Watchers in the Sky.
Sure.
The only thing Watchers in the Sky does differently is it cuts all of you players off from your meta-knowledge, which I think is superb. Because even with Lovecraft's fiction, if you're reading a single story, you now can, of course, collate it all, and see every mention of the same creature and get a much deeper understanding of that story than the actual character in the story ever had.
Right.
And furthermore, it was a weakness in my writing, I think, in No Security, in that I tried to cut people off from that meta-knowledge and not using Lovecraftian monsters, but at the same time, I was not nearly confident enough, and all my monsters have some form of internal consistency, weakness, understanding of them, logic, internal or otherwise, that you can discover. And I love that it's not only not Lovecraftian, it is anti-narrative, because there is no death of meaning like the death of narrative. And fuck you, you die. And I just think it's brilliant. I just think it's so bold, and it's such a cool choice. And that's why when I bought it, I was just like, man, when could I ever run this to the guy? It would be so unsatisfying. And then I found it was part of a campaign. I'm like, God, that'd be the most horrible campaign ever. I have to read it. And I just I think it's a really bold artistic choice. And that's why I find it the most interesting. I also find it the creepiest. The brain fuckness, the way you have to role play your loved ones. every PC's loved one's getting a weird fucking tick or like or deformity, the body parts reappearing at the birds showing up everywhere. I think it's by far the most unsettling of them. We completely disagree on that front. I think it's so cool.
No, I mean, I agree with you on those points, but the thing is, like...
I think it's got to be different when you're not the guy inflicting those points.
Well, no, it's not... Like, it exists, it did that, and that's fine, but it's like an M. Night Shyamalan movie. You can never do it again. Like,
Okay.
No one can ever run another thing like that, because otherwise you're just ripping off Watchers in the Sky. So, like, you can't do The Sixth Sense again. You should have done The Happening in the first place, but, like, it's the same principle. Like...
I can see that. I guess artistically it's been made.
Yeah, it's been done, and it can never... Like, you can't... Like, that's a... Like... That is a good point. Like, why not have that experiment where fuck you narrative, fuck the narrative happens, but like, it's a dead end. Like, if in an evolutionary dead end, you can't have that happen again because
it's an art game.
Yeah.
It's not practical for sustained play. It's
Yeah.
like a narrative type.
Yeah,
thing.
I mean,
I could see that. Yeah.
So that's why I like it least is because, like, again, one of the things I do when I play games is like, what can I learn from it? Even a bad game will often have some cool element in it or something interesting, but there's nothing to take away from the Watchers. I mean, there are some of the specific gimmicks of the Watchers that are really cool, like the mannerisms of the NPCs, the brain parasites and stuff like that you could introduce. But if you have a game, if you did this more than once with your group, they'd be like, well, why the fuck do we even play if there's no... Like, realistic, there is that kind of like, why would the characters know all this stuff about the narrative? But on the other hand, why did all the characters write such very detailed letters in Dracula, describing all the shit? Like, at a certain point, you have to have... We aren't just people playing as characters inside the environment. We are the readers of the story. Mm-hmm. And if you just... do that fuck you to the readers every single time. If you do it more than once, you can't have the narrative.
Well, maybe don't make it specifically Lovecraftian. I think something you could take from Watchers in the Sky and move over to the games is that sort of metatextual subversion of expectations.
Yeah.
Like, they were subversion of Lovecraftian expectations.
Sure.
But if you could figure out a way to totally get your group going one way and then... smack him from the left hand. Like, I just really think that's interesting to pull off. Like, and yet again, you don't want to do that every night.
Yeah.
You can't pull off twists like that all the time. But I do find it interesting. It is an interesting subversion of tropes.
Sure. And to be fair, I probably would be I would have enjoyed a lot more had I been the one running it. So,
to be honest, the only thing I can think of that was even kind of like that in my short gaming career was. And it's not in part. Much of it is David's attributed. It was Bran in Better Angels because you have this superhero. You have this superheroic trope. He is a drug dealer. He is bad. Anything I do to him is good because I'm the vigilante and good. Like, and it is a horrifying trope because it totally just wipes out the idea of poverty and the age of that drug dealer and what that money is being used for and all kinds of stuff like that. And granted, I just kind of did it as a one-off. I'm not smart enough to plan it that far ahead, but David's refusal to acknowledge it.
That he murdered a teenager.
Yeah, refusal to accept it. And by doing so, sticking hard to the Silver Age vigilante trope and my refusal to let go at the same time, I think it made really interesting role-playing because it was sort of a metatextual subversion of like a thing I bet everyone was expecting when the campaign started, me included.
Yeah.
So I think that's something you can take away from it, even if you don't want to like ruin your players' lives every night.
Well, like, and the other thing is you don't have to answer every mystery. Like, you don't have to answer everything. Like, I don't need the entire life cycle of the color out of space. I don't need to know what planet it evolved from or what fucked up cosmic god created it or whatever else. Like, and you certainly could do those kind of...
But you know how it works.
You know how
you don't know how anything in Watchers works.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
The chart, the flow chart does not meet. Like, it's just a bunch of disparate circles with arrows that kind of fizzle and drop off.
Yeah.
Well, and I would ask, at least for your enjoyment, Ross, would have been better had it actually been switched with the rending box at the end, to where basically the narrative structure was kind of breaking down progressively to the point where we finally hit a point where nothing made sense anymore.
Oh, that's really interesting. The narrative structure dies with you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. As players, because you're talking about the whole meta-narrative, and what we're connecting to is that we can see, like, oh, this is Noden's base, oh, this is Nyarlathotep, and finally get to the end, I don't know what the fuck's happening anymore.
Oh, wait, we're not real.
Exactly.
Fade to black.
Would that have possibly affected your enjoyment?
I think that's a really
Shit,
good...
now I want to do that.
No. Like, that's a really...
Kind of pissed you said that.
That's a brilliant idea, Aaron. Like, to be honest, like, this reminds me, like, one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen in anything, period, is Don Hertzfeldt's cartoon Rejected at the end.
Yeah.
Because when everything's, like, it's these hand-drawn cartoons, you know, that are, like, being shown as advertisements for all these fake TV channels. But then... the animator grew weirder, more despondent as his ads kept getting rejected, and then everything fell apart, and then it's just black and white drawing, or stick figures on white paper, but then the paper starts getting crumbled, and you see these little cartoon characters which you thought were fictional, but they're like getting horrified as it's like breaking the fourth wall as
the wind's blowing,
the wind's blowing,
dying.
and just the one character smashing at the paper, and you see the tear in the paper. I mean, that is just like cosmic horror in how total and brief it is, as they are all being swept up in the void. I mean, it still gives me chills when I watch it.
I want to start an online group and just reorganize Final Revelation. It's a really good idea.
So
you're welcome.
Like that, I mean,
I'm not thanking you for it.
Well,
it's going to torment you. You're like,
I'm pissed.
You're like one of the characters in Watchers of the Skies.
Yeah.
You can't get that satisfying
Somebody else is playing.
That's so fun on this side.
It's like I said. I think we're talking about in the exact same terms, but it's from one side of the table to the other. I think it's a GM scenario.
Yeah, and it's the one. It's the ones like you have
one
to do.
person's meant to have a great time. Everyone else is meant to be really.
It's like everyone
confused.
has to watch Citizen Kane. Everyone needs to play Watchers in the Sky.
Yeah,
but you can't. You don't watch.
I don't think everyone can play. I think everyone needs to inflict Watchers on the Sky on someone else, because I think its magic is lost if they know what's going to come.
Yeah,
and I think the true moment of it is watching everybody. So wait, what happened? Did we miss a clue? And you just being like, no!
But at a certain level, that's like a pyramid scheme kind of thing. At a certain,
I know. It's diminishing returns, so do it early.
No, you need to get.
But it's very much like I like rubber. Dan does not.
Yeah.
Like, why did it happen? No reason. Like, and I think that's great. And Dan throws a chair and loses his mind.
He didn't throw the chair.
No.
He did mentally, but he.
Yeah, no. His quiet rage was way more awkward.
Yeah,
than chair
you heard it here first. Multi-level marketing gaming through Caleb. So get in on the ground floor.
I think it's important that if anybody else does this game, at the very end, though, when the Friday group realizes they're screwed, the apocalypse is cyclical, and that they're done, the GM just needs to stand up, game over, throw up party poppers and firecrackers.
Yeah, bring a mic, then drop it. Walk out. Moonwalk out. Look him in the eye. Pretend you're Kanye West.
Moonwalk out while giving those fingers.
So, yeah. Now the only thing that make it better is if Kanye West was playing it or running it. Now I just want Kanye West involved in some way.
No.
It would be perfect. So moving on, Dancers in the Blood was a third scenario.
Dance in the Blood.
Dance in the Blood. Sorry, we were the dancers. It was not a favorite. This was my favorite scenario because it had.
It's definitely up there for me.
Yeah. Because it had the elements in that we didn't know what to expect. It's not explicitly Lovecraftian, or it's not explicitly Cthulhu, like previously written Cthulhu mythos. It's new shit. Mm-hmm. Working on the themes that are established in Lovecraftian fiction, like, alien horrors, but also the sort of Innsmouth horror of like it's within you.
Finding out that you're secretly a part of it. So
that it's in your blood, and.
Dance is a elaboration on Lovecraft, whereas I think Watchers is a rebuke on the logical disconnect of enjoying fiction about this topic, which should not be enjoyable. it is a rebuke of you for doing that, whereas Dance is just a really good Cthulhu game. Suicide Party was awesome. And my favorite moment of emergent play from the whole thing, because I did not imagine, let's all try and kill each other and ourselves. It's not working! Sort of darkly hilarious. And then the voice in the radio was really another one of those great Trail of Cthulhu super creepy clues. Well,
bringing back, sorry, you just want to mention, like, one of the things I do think of the disconnect between enjoying the fiction and being part of it is, like, every time I watch or read a story, like, I was playing Last of Us recently, like, I like post-apocalyptic games. I do not want to live in a post-apocalyptic universe. Ever. Like, even in one of the nicer ones, like, no, I would not want that at all.
We get to have all these discussions, like, what's going to happen when the bombs go off? I am dead. I'm either radiated or starving.
But in Dance in the Blood, it worked really well. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And that, I guess, part of the reason why it was so, again, Watchers in the Sky seemed kind of, like, iffy to me was because, like, right after that in Dance in the Blood, it's like, oh, wow, this was great. I mean, like, it had enough of a resolution for me. It was still very dark, you know. It was very purist. And
also, from a technical standpoint, I'm pretty amazed in that it turns, like, super lazy writing into super creepy foreshadowing. Like, you all happen to be secretly related at the bar that happens to have a picture that proves you're secretly related on the same night. It's just like the worst Deus Ex Machina coincidence ever. But that is like a very creepy start to the game, in the sheer improbability of it. And I thought that was like a pretty
because then we revealed the whole missing time thing, and which is is a good point. Like, turning what appears to be a cliche into an actual effective forward. Yeah, that was a really good trick.
I mean, and that's what I think. What I like best about Graham Wasley is, like, you know, writing what you can get away with, and he does a lot of stuff that is just totally paper thin and transparent, but he gets away with it because he handles it really well. Like, and stuff I could not do, that if I tried, it would be like, oh my god, really? So that's what I really like about Dance, and that those radios are freaking creepy.
There's not much else to say. I mean,
no, it's just a solid scenario.
That would probably be, actually, I mean, out of the four, that would probably be the best one to run as a one shot at a convention.
You could do that at a con. Especially if you have Suicide Party at the end, which is just it's really all anyone's looking for at a Cthulhu game, and it just skips all the pretense, and we all just kill each other for the TPK.
The sad thing is, when we ran that and that started up, for some reason in my mind, the Everything Is Awesome song from the Lego started playing in my head.
Holy shit!
I know.
What is wrong with you?
You're really darker than I gave you credit for.
Yeah, that's wow. I mean,
I still argue that game's not that dark, but
I do love how Tom just is like, nope, this is my life now. Grabs a shovel, walks off. Off to go bury myself.
To be fair, he had the choice of becoming a monster. So,
I know, but considering how everyone else was desperately trying to murder themselves before it happened, it's just like, no, seems legit.
I think for Mike, another thing was also just the village that we wound up in with the like the mother with her kid kept going out. Like, that was a really good.
The two kids.
Oh god, that was
like killing the dog to try and send it on the ground, and all of the former versions of the village that were wiped out by the worm people. Like, the further you went down to the lake, it was like, oh, it's another ruined village. It's another ruined village 119 years later
on top of another.
Like, you just these sediment of apocalypses. Like,
I mean, because that shows like you can have this like it's a good thing if you want to run a mystery, like that would be a good one to read up on, because it's like again the whole layered onion thing of like talking about like here are the initial clues, the coincidences, then you work your way in and then get to the core. The cycle, 119-year cycle. Well, oh shit, I'm a monster. Like that's it's a very good textbook definition of or structure of how to run a mystery game. Not just that. So yeah, out of all of them, that would be the one to look at if you just want to have help running a mystery game. But yeah. Which is not so much for the next one, the final one, the rending box.
Kind of ended on a down note here. It's not my favorite scenario.
It's shorter. That's one of the things.
It's a weird mix.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's very hard to bring in multiple things from the mythos at the same time.
Yeah.
And it had Dialith, and I love the box, and then Shub Niggurath for some reason, and then it ends.
Yeah.
And it's just like Monster Mash and whatever, we're done.
Yeah.
I did like... so I like the box. I like how the box is described. I like the creepy... They're called floating scenes. I don't know if the group is... listeners are familiar with how Trail of Cthulhu pre-generated scenarios are written.
Yeah.
But they typically have core scenes that you have to get to in a specific order. And then
there's a spine.
There's a spine.
And then there are floating scenes.
And then floating scenes that happen when they're appropriate.
And then there's also like reaction scenes that are triggered by certain reactions, like antagonist reactions. Oh, if they find out this clue, the bad guy will try and get them, or something like that.
Which is a good structure. But these just have exceptionally good floating scenes because it's all about who opens the box, because player characters are going to open the box.
Yeah. It's the premise of the scenario.
I like how the tunnels of Shub Niggurath are like, depending on your sanity, like meaty and digesting you, or just like really gross and vegetative.
Yeah.
Depending on like how crazy you've gone.
Yeah.
And then, but like the cultists are like really weird and hard to get after. And then the eyeless guy is kind of creepy, but like, all along and on enough timeline of this blind guy describing you everything he sees and stuff, I thought it got somewhere darkly comical. Maybe I'm just messed up.
Yeah.
And then, but I think the best part is the final, like, you load up, you won, like a return to pulp values, and then no, didn't work.
Shub's just fine.
Yeah, he's just fine because he's everywhere.
Yeah.
The whole earth.
She's everywhere.
Yeah, the whole earth is it, and then you just go crazy and die.
Yeah. Aaron, any reactions to the rending box?
No, it's pretty much everything the same to you on that one. So it ultimately, I have nothing really good at that on that.
Way better if Watchers of the Sky was at the end, which I'm now fully convinced of.
You heard it here. That's definitely the way to do it.
Just how great would it be if you were just like, what the hell was that? No time, we gotta do the epilogue. And then you did it, and then and it was another, what the hell was that? And then you just run out of the room.
Smoke bomb! Drop microphone with a smoke bomb in it.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, we need to bring this up, though. This is our disclaimer. If any of your players now kill you because of this...
You died for art.
You died for art, but Role-Playing Public Radio and its affiliates are not responsible.
Well, unless you have the microphone smoke bomb, I mean, geez. Like, if you run the snare without that, you're just not prepared. Like, you deserve whatever you get.
It's hard to get smoke bombs.
But yeah, the epilogue revelation of, like, things fall apart, the center cannot hold what happens. I really do like the narrative structure of it wrapping itself up. I mean, I felt that is a satisfying ending, and then giving us our own like albatross, essentially. Like, how do you fuck up your past self?
The endless repetition.
Yeah. I like
your
that.
past self, which is also you, because there is no past and future anymore.
Yeah.
You're just trying to convince yourself reality exists again, so you're not in endless agony in the void. Like, I think, while I find the rending box funny but a little disappointing as a scenario overall, I thought the frame narrative ended really well. The Friday group whole thing I thought was very well done. So
Yeah. I mean,
if you count that all together as one scenario, the prologues and the epilogues of each thing, I think that's a very solid scenario.
Because the whole campaign builds up to that, and it's not a scenario of if, like, if you're able, or can you just stop them? Can you save the day? Mm-hmm. It's about how do you react to this circumstance. So it's all about that one scene where the players, and then I realize now, is like, what do you do when you find out you're doomed?
You find your own dead bodies.
And I really enjoyed that because I do want to do more of these kind of campaigns where it's not about like saving the day or stopping the cult or solving the murder or whatever. It's about how do you react to circumstances that are beyond your control. You don't have total control anymore. You're not totally like I would like to do scenarios like the nuclear reactor is going to blow up and you're going to die no matter what. Do you try and stop it and save other people? Do you try and write a letter to your loved ones at home or something like that?
And it's very metafictional. I mean, he really plays with expectations without being cheesy and like breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see a much lesser game dealing with the same issues and very much being like you're playing a player who's playing a role playing very much telescoping into endless. I almost kind of wish Dave Eggers-esque, heartbreaking work of staggering genius, metafiction, and it would kind of fall up its own ass. But it's very much like, I know your players are expecting this, so I'm going to tell them to expect to die in every scenario because it's one shots. It's how it works. So I'm going to play off that expectation of the game, hoping that they're going to think that at the end of all those one shots death, then they can maybe save the day. But then I'm just going to do it to them one more time. And I just think that is really great manipulation of player expectation. For a very powerful storytelling reaction.
Aaron?
So, there's not much else I can add on top of that because ultimately, especially, if you're just coming into it figuring that this is a pulp scenario, then, it's going to be kind of the kick in the pants when you realize you're on the infinite Ferris wheel, just kind of reliving the apocalypse over and over again. So.
Yeah, if I had to describe the structure of the whole thing, it would be very much like Lucy, Charlie Brown, and the football. Like, Charlie Brown knows it's going to happen. Lucy knows it's going to happen. The football knows it's going to happen. It's preordained, and it's not about it not happening.
Right.
It's about understanding how it happened this time.
Yeah.
So it happens 4 times, and then the Frame scenario, it happens a 5th time. And you're happy because every party leaves pleased because of it. And I think that's kind of a feat.
Holy crap! That's actually kind of that's also. This game is also kind of like the new Evangelion movies. It's just exactly the same.
We haven't gotten to the end yet. They haven't released part 4 yet.
You know how this is going.
It's going to have really cool fight scenes, so it doesn't matter.
But you know what's going to happen.
Cool fight scenes.
The football is going to cosmic football is being pulled away from arms, and we're going on our back.
Yeah, I don't care. But one thing, the only thing I could see possibly doing different is maybe extending the epilogue. Again, maybe doing a whole session that's focusing, you're doomed, how do you react as you're wandering through the ruined husk of the universe as the world's getting weirder and weirder, being taken over by these monsters. It sounds kind of like that. One thing I want to get is one of those, that 1930s apocalypse that they have, the White Dead World or whatever it is.
Those are. I do want to get those.
Yeah, because I kind of want to do you're fucked no matter what you do. How do you react when you're fucked? And no matter.
Yeah, Pelgrane has a whole line of apocalyptic.
They have at least
trail
two.
Stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I think they're gonna do another print compilation once they get a couple more.
It's probably how Ken Hite will steal my money next year at Gen Con. Chortle joyfully as he rifles through my pockets, sends me away broken.
Well, it's him or Gabe, so
pretty much.
It's one or the other. You have no choice. I think anyway, if you've listened to this, you should have a very good idea of whether or not you'll enjoy this campaign. I don't think we've covered pretty much every.
Do it to others before they do it to you.
And on that note, we'll.
It's the prisoner's dilemma.
We'll take a break. We'll be right back with shoutouts and an anecdote about being Shanghai. And we're back. So before we get into the anecdotes, we have a great one. We have some new shoutouts. First off, I'll just get started with Scapegoat 2. This was gifted to me during the Steam holiday sale. It's a puzzle game available on PC, Mac, and Linux. And you are a magical goat. You're trying to escape a castle. You have a mouse who's a friend, and it's a puzzle game. It's like a platforming puzzle game, and it's very fun if you like puzzles.
Part of the goat renaissance going on in gaming right now.
Yeah. Well, this is a Scapegoat 2. There's already a Scapegoat 1, which I've also beaten and played, and it's very fun too. Yeah.
Goat Renaissance was my high school band.
Yeah. What genre? Were they ska?
That's an obvious.
You can't put us in a label.
Oh, I see. Screamo.
We contain multitudes.
Multitudes.
That means it's a screeching sound coming out of the garage.
Anyway, yeah. So if you like puzzle games, Scapegoat 2 is about as good as you can. It has a great soundtrack too. Also. Let's see here. Next up, you've been listening to audiobook that's been very entertaining.
Yeah, so I got Patton Oswalt's new book, Silver Screen Fiend. Mm-hmm. And first off, I think Patton Oswalt is a fantastic writer, beyond just being a good comedian writer, like just as prose. But if you're going to get a Patton Oswalt story in your head, you could read the text and do a bad impersonation of his voice, but the audiobooks of him actually using his expert delivery to deliver his own prose, I don't know why you would do anything else. So I am listening to it instead of reading it, and it is much darker than Zombie Spaceship Wasteland. Yeah. But it's much more coherent because it's a memoir, and it is a full-blown addiction memoir, like Confessions of an Opium Eater. In that tradition, and completely hits every genre point, but it's not for drugs and alcohol. It's literally his addiction to film, and it's very much about his rise up through the ranks of stand-up comedy. But it is this side narrative is about him going to the New Beverly Repertory one-screen theater in Los Angeles and watching movies obsessively, 22 in a month at just theaters. And the reason he does it is that he's kept all of his calendars for those days, and he marked down exactly what movie he saw at which time, at which theater for years. So it makes me, first off, it makes me feel like a bag of shit for using only streaming Netflix and not getting, weird stuff in the mail like I used to. And then it is also just... while dark, pants-shittingly hilarious. The anecdote about the clown who cried and his interactions with Jerry Lewis I had to pull over today because I was just crying laughing at it. So I would recommend it to anybody.
Yeah.
It just sounds interesting because Tom had the copy of the last audiobook that he
Zombie Spaceship Wasteland.
For that. I was just saying if that's more dark, just because, some of the things in when he was talking about his theater days got pretty depressing when talking about the people that he was around. Yeah,
but there's a narrative through line through this whole book.
Oh, okay.
It's not very much this is my D&D essay and this is my other essay. And then, it's just really good. I consider myself a bit of a film nerd, I guess for the middle of Ozarks, Missouri. It's not a high bar to jump. Yeah. But he very frequently, I'm just what the hell is that? I've never even heard of that before. Yeah. He is, an encyclopedia. So
there's a good documentary I've called, I think it's called Cinemania, and it's about those kind of obsessive cinephiles, they're in New York. Have you heard of this documentary? It's
I have not.
Yeah, but it's about their lifestyle, them going to the theater, watching 5 movies a day, every day for fucking their entire lives. And they know everything. It's Quentin Tarantino, but without the directorial talent and Hollywood backing,
Well, it's also very much fetish. Tied into his development as a comedian, which is interesting for me because I don't know how Patton Oswalt exists in this world, making some of the references he makes and having a career. Because it's some of the stuff he just pulled directly out of my head, and I can't believe other people find it funny. But it is very much about how he developed that, in the 80s, doing fart jokes and trying to be the next sitcom star, versus moving to San Francisco and LA and then finding an underground comedy scene and then going in the complete opposite direction and being as obscure and dense as possible, and then like trying to rein it into like any kind of doable medium between like Carlos Mencia and some guy you've never heard of.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah.
Interesting. No, we'll have to listen to it on the way to Gen Con, if nothing else. So, Aaron,
So-
the bad robots. I think you've been talking about.
No, well, that's something you introduced us to. Although
Yeah.
I've thoroughly fallen in love with it, and I'm kind of pissed that the normal source that you shared with me, I can't find it on there, so I can caught up. But no, Bad Robot is a Sky One production.
It's British. I don't know. I don't pretend to understand British TV channels.
Yeah,
They talk funny.
we don't know.
Their voices sound funny.
We just mentioned we live in the middle of the ocean.
I
It's
think
all right.
Sky is. I think it's actually
We're literate,
Australian.
okay? We know that the sky is not. We don't live in a flat plane, all right?
No, the link on there, just to quickly get it out of the way, I'm pretty sure Sky One is Australian, but I could be wrong.
No, I'm pretty sure it's British.
Is it? Well, the show I know is that, but
Their voices are wrong.
Anyway, the entire premise of this was a corporation run by a robot gone rogue, as has now seeded the world with different devices with AIs that are just assholes to you. The long of the short is that it's a it's a prank show, but they just do it under the guise of these really, really shitty robots, which they'll go to a photo booth that will screw up your picture, ask you a billion questions. The robot that will either stand in a hotel, a car rental place, and constantly
Looks like a creepy man.
Yeah, creepy mannequin. Or my personal favorite to this point is the trivia machine that will trick you in the worst way possible and then mock you afterwards. It's like a you don't know Jack game brought to life. So
I like the parking ticket one, especially when it's just away from the person. Like they've got it on wheels.
I hadn't seen that.
It's quite amusing. So yeah, good stuff. We don't know anything about how TV works outside of this country. So except we know it exists. We know you guys have it. We don't know anything else.
Why don't you say words right?
You know, I did read an interesting theory. Like the reason why American and English accents are different is because after America separated from England, the English people started what we consider the English accent today is like what in the 18th century upper classes spoke like, and then everyone started talking like that to distinguish themselves from the Americans. So I don't know how true that is, but I can see that happening.
I think it's because of freedom.
Probably.
God damn.
For a second shout out, I would like to mention the Adult Swim infomercials, which is a playlist on YouTube.
Too many cooks
is the big one. Everyone's heard that.
It goes so much deeper.
It does. And there's also unedited footage of a bear.
Yeah. Which is genuinely one of the more terrifying things I've seen.
It is very creepy, yes.
Or are you part of the anti-heroin?
Well, there's there's over a dozen of them right now, and they keep adding new ones. And online for-profit university, which is literally an Eclipse Phase story seed, about the dangers of rogue AIs. There is also
and lazy non-accredited
Smart
schools.
Pipe is really good.
Smart Pipe.
Book of Christ.
By good, it's not good. It's terrifying.
Oh, the Book of Christ.
Book of Christ is
Noble
a
Ark.
little blasphemous. Morning.
A little?
Broom Shakalaka, if you haven't seen that.
I didn't really care for that one as much. That one, and then Goth Fitness.
Goth Fitness was definitely the weakest.
Yeah.
It's definitely a one-note joke.
Yeah.
But there's like a dozen of them. They're about 6 to 10 minutes long each. 6 to 12 minutes long each, and they're free. You're on YouTube. Why might
Live Forever as Yourself Today is also really good.
Well,
I'm cold.
Honestly, the beauty part of all
I
of
like
these,
my wife.
No, the beauty part of all of this is how they originally air it before putting it on YouTube, which is a block around 2 or 3 on Saturday or Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Where the only people that are up at that time are stoners or people who are drunk out of their mind. So, and watching something while getting over their hangover, and suddenly you see something like Too Many Cooks come on, and it is branded as paid advertising in the TV guide, so...
I think I like it so much because it is 11 minutes, and then I get to rest. Like, because it's very much like, I am not a big fan of Tim and Eric. Like, Tim and Eric will do something that I find hilarious, and then I will get exhausted, and then I will want it to stop.
Yeah.
Because it's just assaulting my
They're
senses.
very hit or miss.
Yeah, it is extremely hit and miss, where I feel like these are all pretty polished, singular concepts that still
They know when to quit.
Yeah, leave me feeling nauseous and disoriented, but then I have some time to breathe and like sort of process what I saw.
No, it's kind of the reverse of what I used to call SNL syndrome, where if a skit was not funny, they would just keep hammering at it for the next 15 minutes until you laughed at it.
Yeah.
I feel like Too Many Cooks. It was more than one gag. I mean, it was layered gags, but yeah, it's pretty relentless, and it's hitting you with a lot of shit really quick.
But then you're right. It ends, and you can just sit there and process for a second.
Well, unedited footage of Bear, I need like everyone to be quiet for like a minute after it's done because I don't know what just happened.
I will put a link to the playlist of all that has all of them on YouTube, so you can enjoy all of them and watch them all one right after the other. And have a breakdown, then get that smoke bomb ready. So yeah, you. But speaking of Whiplash, I guess you saw that movie recently.
Yes, Whiplash is stars J.K. Simmons, and I believe his name is Miles Teller. Mm-hmm. It's a jazz movie. I was really into jazz in high school and college, and it's about a drummer. And my best friend from high school and even today is a very talented kit drummer in jazz circles. Like he will do cut sessions and like serious stuff, but it's a young kit drummer at a very, very tough conservatory who gets recruited by this like alpha musician played by J.K. Simmons, who runs the band, who is really just an abusive sociopath, who is just a utter psycho about everything. It's not so much about music as it is like psychotically controlling you and making you play till you bleed and like yelling at people and slapping them. So very much like the guy from Full Metal Jacket if he had a large big band. And like these abusive relationships this teacher has, and it's just really well shot, and the music's amazing. And I don't know about J.K. Simmons playing the piano, but I don't know how they shot it unless Miller is actually doing all the stuff on the drums, and he is doing some Buddy Rich, like 4 different rhythms in every limb shit, and it is real impressive. But it is also one of those movies that is pretty rare. It's like The Graduate, where like if you misunderstand the ending, meaning you don't understand the ending exactly as I understand it, I'm not sure we can be friends. Like it has an ending that is ambiguous, but I don't know how you could think it's ambiguous. But if you go the wrong direction that I'm not on, I would be extremely disappointed in discussing the movie with you. Like
now I'm scared of watching it.
I guess, but like I don't think you would miss out on it. But yeah, if you think The Graduate was like happy, they lived happily ever after on that bus.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's very much one of those
Who
like
thinks that?
there are people. There are people who think that.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I feel like if you think something like that at the end of this movie, you have just totally whiffed on what the movie was about. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was really great.
Wow. I mean, it's not like the darkest ending, but it's certainly not like a happy Hollywood ending.
No, it's like if they even. It's
an ambiguous ending.
Let's look at this. And spoilers for this movie, if anybody has seen it.
The Graduate.
Yeah, if they're staying together, that's years of counseling, therapy, fights, potential fist fights.
They have, well, maybe not like that, but they
still.
Well, if Whiplash jumps the shark, it's in the second act.
Yeah.
But the last act is very much traditional in some way, but well, it is in my mind the darkest of endings that doesn't just accede to like ridiculousness. But
right.
Yeah. Anyway, go.
Well, speaking of mixed narratives, I recently read a novel that I'm not quite 100% on. Like I got it. It's a horror novel called Concrete Grove. Concrete Grove. Sorry.
I thought it was another goat segue.
Yeah. No. And it's a horror novel, and I thought it was going to be something like I've been working on Ruin. I'm still working on that, by the way. And it's about this basically abandoned tenement building in a England ghetto, English ghetto. And so I thought, architectural horror. That looks up my alley, and it's not that at all. Like there is this abandoned building called the Needle inside the book that is basically haunted, but it's because it was basically buried on or built on a sacred grove or something like that. It's a druid's burial ground for all I can tell. And the novel itself is kind of like it's a very rapey book. Like there's a lot of sexual horror and assault in it, which is not mentioned at all in the blurb.
It's a hell of a recommendation.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a mixed thing.
Yeah.
I'm not really giving it a shout. I'm just reviewing it for the sake of people. And I got it because it was free one day on Amazon, and someone recommended it to me. Or like that person had read it, like, hey, it's a novel. It looks like architectural horror. You might want to go. So I'm like, all right, I'll read it. And so it doesn't give you that kind of thing. But on the other hand, there's very interesting characters in it. That have kind of fucked up lives, and that's why they're in the ghetto, and like you're kind of interested in what happens to these characters. And the ending, I felt like I was kind of like the beginning's very weak, but like you sort of get going in the middle, and by the end, like okay, well that ending kind of satisfied, that kind of makes sense. It's not I thought it was going to have a stereotypical trashy horror novel ending where like the characters who should have all died didn't make it, and they're like we were good and up until and we're ready for a sequel novel, that kind of ending.
Yeah.
It's not that. So, it actually the ending is like justified in the text, which I didn't think was going to come, but it does. So it has that going for it, and there are other novels set in that area, Concrete Grove, which are apparently sequels to it, but have different characters in it. So, like, I'm kind of curious about what happens to them and see what the author's going. So, like, he kind of lost me at the beginning, but I kind of went through and was like, I'm kind of with him by the end. So, it's not a full recommendation, but, it's like $2.99 on Amazon. So, and it's certainly a different view on horror. And I don't want, but here's the thing, I found the reason why the characters were so interesting, the novelist at the end says, like, oh, these are real people. Like, I changed their names around, but these are people I've met. I'm in the ghetto, and, that's why they have interesting, fucked up personal lives, because they're actually real. They're not, like, cliched two-dimensional characters. And I've noticed that a lot of horror novelists, when they're writing sort of mid-list kind of pulp stuff, they're like, if there's an interesting character, like, I bet that's based on a real person because he stands out among all these, like, stoic doctors and cops,
amongst the monster food.
Yeah, exactly.
There's someone I actually give a shit about.
Yeah, exactly. And I found that kind of interesting. But Aaron, there's a show you've been watching recently.
Yes, one you actually recommended to me that I watch that came out this year called Tokyo Ghoul. Watching that all the way through. It's a short first season, only about 13 episodes, which actually anime.
So you're watching the anime, not the manga.
Yeah, I've not read the manga, so I've not completed the further along the story, and I'm probably going to stick to that just because, as a personal preference, I've noticed that a lot of action. Manga with different action settings. Depending on the artist, it's really hard for me to read something and to kind of capture the scene, because a lot of certain manga artists will do a lot of heavy action scenes where everything just gets lost in the background because all of this is black and white. So,
well, it's because you got to make 18 pages that hour.
Yeah, no, and that's completely understandable.
That's why they have assistants.
Speed lines are a fucking survival mechanism, not a trope. So your wrist doesn't snap off.
If it's a top tier manga, they'll just like, fuck it, I'll be late. That's why Berserk and One Punch Man are like late.
Yeah, goes offhand. But before One Punch Man became more than a stick figure series. But in any case, the plot revolves around a college student named Ken Kaneki. There is his name, who was just kind of this average lone protagonist.
An average schmo as a protagonist in anime?
I know!
Is he a student?
He is! And he's an orphan, too!
Oh, wow. Jeez.
But the first episode revolves around him kind of shyly asking this girl that he's noticed reading the same books that he likes, only to find out that she's a ghoul, which in this series is a race of other humans with higher abilities that eat other people. of course, they are actually well known in this
Homo
universe.
sapien Hannibal?
Yeah, essentially. Although, again, they get weird off abilities where mainly some sort of
Like
tentacle
Hannibal.
thing will spread from them. Not in that, just that there's no horrible
They're
stuff
not as
going.
powerful as Hannibal.
Yeah. Oh, no, they're... No.
They just have super strength and speed.
Let me continue this or what?
I'm sorry.
No, well, basically they are supercharged by eating whatever that's like person they get to hold on to. The police force knows about this, but again, it's barely under control, and most of them actually control districts, just feeding off who they can. Although he ends up somewhat getting rescued when somebody attempts to kill the school that was feeding on him. He gets crushed and almost killed in the assault. Although this doctor who saves him ends up transplanting some of her organs into him, creating some sort of half-breed. So the entire story is revolving around him trying to learn how to live as a ghoul now that he has to eat people. And the kicker of this is that any other food, with the exception of coffee for some reason, I have no idea, that's the one thing, tastes horrible to him now. It will cause them to vomit. It will give them intestinal cramps. So, yeah.
So a teen boy who's sexually interested in a girl, turns out the female is a horrible monstrosity that is unnatural, and by interacting with her, he is forever corrupted and changed.
Yeah. And it really...
Good job, Japan! Way to evolve those tropes!
But...
You're blazing new trails.
But...
You put it that way.
But particularly saying... the strength of the Tokyo Ghoul really is the world building, that you actually get to learn about the different factions that are running around, particularly the one which... Again, I will have to find the name of it later on.
Also, girls are totes scary, y'all.
Yeah, no.
Well, it sounds like everyone's scared as shit.
Yeah,
they have a race of cannibals.
Oh, it gets worse because the police are just as scary because they have an entire squad of them hunting them down using weapons that are made out of dead ghouls to hunt them down. And
that's
nobody's
Jesus, Japan.
The only good people that really say this, and this is still getting dark, and this will be spoilers, but it's in the manga. The good group of ghouls that he gets into essentially survives by going to a cliff that is normally a known suicide spot for people and collecting the bodies there. That is how the good guys work.
Do they just stare up with their mouths open?
No, they just go to the
Fork and knife.
No, they just go to the cliff, wait for the go down. Did somebody jump today? Yep. Pull them back in, cut them up.
They get snow shovels, just scoop them back up and pick up. Do they use chopsticks or do they use fork and knife? Or is it hand wrapped?
Actually, everything is very tactile in this one. Every time I've seen somebody eating, it is completely with hands.
Nice. All right.
No, it's an interesting series. So.
Well, speaking of interesting and classy series, we should end this on A Touch of Cloth, which is another British series that we've been watching.
Well, it is essentially the British Police Squad, or the Navy Gun.
Produced by Charles Brooker, who does a lot of media commentary, making fun of the media with like Newswipe. It's on Sky. I don't know what the deal is with Sky. I don't know anything about British TV other than the shows that I like that are funny. And yes, it is Police Squad. It is a parody of police procedurals, but it is
more racy than Police Squad.
It is far racier.
Well, from the standards that they're allowed to get away with.
A lot of boner jokes.
Yeah, it's a little odd to see such like puerile juvenile humor that he would typically do they're dad jokes, they're dad joke logic, but it's used in really not dad joke subject matter.
Oh yeah, and it's so great because all the actors on the series play it so straight faced, they never break once.
But yeah, there's like 10 gags a minute. I mean, it's ridiculous.
The prop cost alone, I'm pretty sure the actors have to be doing it for free because the amount they spend on signage in that damn show.
It's amazing. And again, there's just tons of gags. I love the one episode where it's like, oh, where are we going to break into? The museum's cocaine and jewels exhibit.
Any of our fans who play Payday, we need to upvote that as the next.
Yeah, no.
Give that snake more cocaine.
So it's out there if you're so you should watch it. It's funny. So there's not much else to say about it.
No, there really isn't.
So finally, though, we have our anecdote. We can't forget the anecdotes. So recently, Tom has run a Call of Cthulhu game.
So angry it wasn't there.
Yeah, based on the premise. After, like in last episode or in a recent episode, he talked about a show that he'd watched. I think it was like Museum Mysteries or something like that.
Yeah, Mysteries at the Museum.
Mystery, and there's one museum that talks in San Francisco that talks about people being shanghaied in the 19th century. Century. So he that's a great premise for a Cthulhu scenario. So the premise is we were people who were shanghaied in 1848 and find ourselves on a ship heading to somewhere in the Pacific. And so we have pre-generated characters. I take one that Tom made, and Dave took one, and you took one, Aaron.
Yes.
And then you decided, like the captain tells us, you work or you don't get food. This is a 6-month journey. What do you do? Well, David is like, I will work. I don't want to die. I'm like, I will work. I don't want to die. And you were...
Why? No, I would like to discuss this with you. Now, may I preface this?
All right.
Okay. Caleb, I would ask you not to hold in the laughter only because I'm afraid of you exploding.
I'm waiting my turn.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Now, granted, the characters that that Tom had pulled up for the pre-gens, one of them, one of them was a sailor, which I took afterwards, I think.
Yeah, that was your second.
That was my second character.
Spoiler alert.
Let's just do this.
Yeah.
Dead Island thing.
Oh, okay, let's take it there. It's a Cthulhu scenario. There's a good chance I'm going down anyway.
Sure.
So it's not really that big of a spoiler anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of them was a normal prospector because this was the gold rush.
Yeah, that's why we were in San Francisco.
Another McGucket. The character I picked out, because I wasn't aware that we were staying in here as of yet, since we were not given that portion of the game yet, was a trained geologist.
Yeah.
Good, decent credit rating.
Yeah.
Not a lot of other skills outside of the more academic ones.
Yeah.
And when I got shanghaied, I said, this is the professor logic hitting in. I'm not, it's like, I reject your reality and replace it with my own. I'm not doing this. I would like to talk to your captain.
Who taught you in college? You have a fucking skewed perspective of higher ed, man. Like, academics do not operate that way.
This is not, no, I was taking more of the pastiche of what education would have looked like in the 19th century.
Even in the 19th century.
But in any case,
yeah.
But also, asshole versus asshole. Let's just get that out of the way.
All right, yeah.
So
the captain.
But also, my problem that came with it with the person who was shanghaied, because I understand getting people out of there, but when you're just picking up schlubs to be able to operate stuff on it, why are you targeting the guy in the fancy suit versus the prospector, whoever David was playing?
Yeah.
Class envy?
Because you're the guy in the bar and they need warm bodies in the boat. Like, they're already committing felonies. I don't think they're going to look at your resume. They're like, oh no, he's overqualified to be Shanghai.
Still, it's... and that's the only issue that I had with the pre-gen.
Just want to be clear, not even close to the story yet.
No, we're not.
We're warming up to it.
But I will now continue from where we're at.
Okay.
A geology professor. I start arguing.
You actually weren't a full professor. You were like a postdoc student.
Oh, a graduate student.
Yeah.
So
all right.
But educated. Anyway.
Yeah, educated.
Anyway, we get onto the ship. I decide that I'm not going to do this, so I try bargaining other ways to be able to get on the ship. I first sell off my watch so I can have enough.
No, that wasn't the first thing you did.
Oh, what was
you offered fencing lessons.
Oh, yeah, no, yes, you're right, because I saw fencing as one of my skills. So I thought, you know what, entertainment or any other way, or self-defense, I will teach them fencing.
Yeah.
Which I grew well enough on a roll to be able to.
You rolled a 3 or something.
Yeah,
on your fast talk check of base 5%. So
I managed to get the fast talk, and then I impaled it. So I could actually do the fencing, which impressed enough people to make me the interesting sideshow attraction of the trip. So I got enough money for that. when I couldn't do anything else that was Tom was shooting down, I decided to trade in my watch, which gave me a little more food.
Yeah.
And then finally, I'm trying to remember this. It was the translation lessons? Or since I actually had knowledge of the local.
Well, by that time we got to Hawaii.
We got into Hawaii.
And you were like, it's
my choices were stay on the island, this guy's out of the game.
Character, yeah.
Or go onto the ship. I decided, since I didn't want to take... I didn't see any other way off of Hawaii at that point, to go with the ship and try one more thing, which was at least translation or trading. Of course, this wasn't flying by Tom anymore. And Ross suggested finding a shark for everybody's entertainment, and I just kind of threw up my hands and said, fuck it, we'll do it.
My first aside. I was not here, but I feel that gives me some objectivity where they've come. Ross knew what he was doing.
No, I did.
Ross very clearly knew what he was doing, because once Aaron sets his mind to an insane creative self-destruction, he doesn't stop for anything. And you can throw him a lifeline, even if that lifeline is made of razor blades and barbed wire, and you can be certain he will grab it.
Okay, to be fair, from my perspective, the game had reached an impasse. Like, Tom was like, you've run out of tricks, you can't make any more skill checks, you have to work or you will die. And I was like, I'm not working. And Tom was unwilling to kill his character, or to, like, start knocking off...
And so the first thing to resolve that was, we'll fight a shark! Knife fight a shark!
Yes, that was the first thing. You have natural history, right? You gotta go for the gills.
Natural history.
It's one of the only skills
that
I
is
have.
a creative use of skill.
Oh, God, no.
My perspective is I just want to get the impasse resolved, because I thought the initial scenario was going to be we getting stranded while we're Shanghai, and like, oh shit, Cthulhu Mythos happens while we're on the boat. But it turns out, no it's going to happen on the island.
Yeah,
so I'm like, I want to get to the fucking island. I want Tom to either kill Aaron's character or for Aaron to, like, start working. I want to get past this roadblock. So Aaron, go fight a shark.
Hey man, no GM can kill Aaron's character faster than Aaron can kill his character.
Absolutely.
That's why I suggested the shark.
But realistically, and this was my argument, at least with Tom's scenario at that point, because when we were going across, it was supposed to be a 3-month journey from San Francisco to
Hawaii, and then another 3 months to the islands where we're picking up the spikes.
No, okay. Now let's trace this from every possible angle, because we're already balls deep in this gaming story. So you suggested, why not fight a shark? And so I want to know what process you said, like what questions you asked for clarification when you said that, or what the logic in your mind was, like, that works as something I would pay you money for on a boat. Like, that counts as a service. Shark fighting.
I just thought, I offered, my character was very strong, so I said, if you kill a shark, I will hoist it up for you. Yeah. Okay. And you can eat the shark meat, all right?
No, we'll get the truth.
And I figured that would so impress the crew that they would give him enough table scraps to get on. Go.
So I just would clarify, it was a hunting expedition that you chose to use a knife for, when the ultimate purpose was to just eat the shark, rather than, like, fish in the ocean.
Okay, well, all right. I will give you in-game logic and then out-of-game logic.
If it could be called that.
They do correlate, but in a different way.
Okay.
So
in-game logic.
In-game logic. Because of what I interpreted as this character's stubbornness, that he had gone this far holding on to his principles. Yes, I air quoted that. That he was it's like he was trying to make a impressive enough. He was either going to starve or he's going to make an impressive enough feat that would allow crew members to either give him food or just make him the main attraction on this case. And then afterwards, if he did survive, he would be able to use the other academic skills once we got to the island. Out of game, I did not like this particular setup going to the island. I thought it was too long, and Tom was dragging it out, in my opinion. And we had reached that impasse. I saw Ross was just kind of wavering on there. David was in the background. I was getting annoyed, and I finally said, fuck it, we'll fight a shark.
Aaron, do you know why it was long?
I know.
Because you didn't work. So it wasn't because of Tom. It was because you refused to accept the premise of the game. That was why. Like, if all three of us had said yes, he would have fast forwarded us to the fucking island probably in like 10 minutes.
All right, so let's get to
the actual shark fight.
How's that go?
No, it actually went well for about, what was it, 5 rounds?
It was a fight. It wasn't not a one.
So are you just fucking swimming with the shark?
We are off on. We've chummed the water off the side. I'm hanging off on the rope, and I am in a gallant attempt to stab it in the gills.
You're trying to drive-by stab a shark.
Yes.
He's doing cold shots to the gills to try it. Now, also I want to preface, shark stats are not in Call of Cthulhu. Fortunately, I have the basic role-playing game, which is the BRP Universal role-playing game, which does have shark stats. So that's what we were using for that. I had to go back to my office to get the other book. So Tom had something to do with that. And that shark had armor on it. So the shark missed its attacks several rounds, and Aaron managed to stab it several times, but because of its armor... He was only doing like a couple of points at a time.
You got tools to do this. You were so clearly to blame for this. You manipulate. He doesn't have the ability to make these decisions.
Hey!
No, okay. So what happens in the shark fight?
Oh, no, I actually did, was it about 10 damage?
Like 9 damage.
9 or 10 damage.
Out of 24.
Out of 24. No, I got pretty far for what it was until the inevitable attack came, and of course, this is... it's like nearly unclothed American geologist versus a white-tipped shark.
Now the absurdity appears to you. Now you realize this is a bad idea.
Oh no, I knew it was going down anyway, but although they did try to save what was left of me.
I tried to save you because you didn't you got down to -1 or something like that.
I was unconscious.
Yeah,
so.
you were unconscious, so I was going to climb down and try and grab you and pull you up, but then feeling some responsibility for this. But then the shark, before I could get down there, shark ate your ass. Like,
weird.
Well, it might have missed.
Well, we were going 20 knots, so when he fell unconscious, he's a mile back there.
I think he was tied to the ship or something. Like he was.
Oh, that's better. Now he's bait.
Yeah, we just put a hook in.
Oh yeah, and that's why I took the other one.
So, yeah.
Now here's where I come in that I wasn't there at all.
Yeah.
Here's how this situation changes if I'm there. Ross suggests this. I slowly give him a knowing glance and shrug as like, what the fuck are you doing? Aaron completely ignores it, dives headfirst into the concept. I start by trying to subtly communicate, what the fuck are you thinking, with numerous hand gestures and facial expressions. I know it's not great for the radio, but if you've ever met me, you can guess what I'm looking like. Then, subtly, I will try and paraphrase what you're actually planning to do as a means of clarification. So, Aaron, let me get this straight.
Yes.
Your idea. To earn passage on our Shanghai steamer is to, for some reason, knife fight a shark for food and the entertainment of your crewmates.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Realizing that it was foolish of me to paraphrase the basic concept, I will then exhaustively, point by point, as I've done in many APs before, list all the reasons this is a terrible goddamn idea. Then I will be summarily ignored, and it will happen anyway. So, like, I've realized, all this is to say is that, Ross, you've convinced me. Like, objectively, nothing has changed from, like, my hypothetical game where I actually showed up to what actually happened, except an extra 20 minutes of me begging you not to do this. Like, I'm hoarse, the game's longer, and you're still eaten by a fucking shark. So I've come around, is what I'm saying. I'm just gonna go, yeah, no. Fight that fucking shark.
You swab the deck or feed the shark.
Why use a knife like a pussy? Use your hands. Get right in there.
Rip the gills out.
Where is Black Eye?
I think I remember, Aaron, you failed your first swim check, so you're like fighting at a penalty too.
Oh yeah, that was.
No, to keep in mind, this was a cargo ship. This was not equipped for like hunting anything.
Oh yeah,
either.
no, it was.
That's why I didn't have a harpoon or anything. In case
Oh my god, people should do tests on you. I don't. It makes sense from no angle. You're like a performance artist.
You're welcome.
You find out Aaron was just
I had
an elaborate ruse all these years.
And the game got weirder from there.
I'm actually Andy Kaufman.
And that was the first hour of the game. Like that, we haven't gotten to the actual plot, So like, we will finish the game tomorrow night. I'll post the AP next time I can.
Will no doubt be a letdown. After shark fucking.
After shark fighting, we will have to fight hard to
peak that.
Yeah, to beat that. But yeah, so
there you go.
But yeah, I mean, I was going to talk about the sympathy monster I sent against Aaron, but what's the point?
No, it's
yeah. So
that's a lesson.
We'll just let them wonder about that. Give them a little, So this has been episode 110, the final revelation post-mortem. I'm Ross Payton, and with me is Aaron and Caleb. Thanks for listening. And
bye, everybody.
Don't go fighting sharks off the side of a 19th century cargo ship. So, bye.
I don't think TLC's going to sing that.